Most people think that when someone they love dies, they'll know what to do next. They assume the hospital will handle it, or the funeral home, or that a family member will step in and take charge. They assume that the practical side of death, the paperwork, the phone calls, the decisions that need to be made in hours and days, will somehow organize itself, or that someone else will carry it. But what if that assumption leaves you, or someone you love, completely unprepared at the worst possible moment? What if there are decisions that must be made within hours of a death that most families have never even considered? Decisions that, once the window closes, cannot be revisited. And what if one of those decisions, one that almost no one talks about in advance, could become one of the most meaningful things a family ever does together? Stay with me, because today we are going to have the conversation that most families avoid, not because it's morbid, but because avoiding it is what leaves people standing in a hospital hallway at 2 a.m, not knowing what to do, not knowing who to call, and not knowing what their loved one would have wanted. This information comes directly from the National Institute on Aging, and I'm going to walk you through it the way I wish someone had walked my own family through it, clearly, calmly, and with respect for how hard this topic is to sit with. There's one part of this, about 2/3 of the way through, that I genuinely believe most people have never thought about, and it might be the most important thing in this entire conversation. Let's start at the very beginning, the moment of death itself. One of the first things families discover, often with surprise, is that there is no requirement to move quickly. If someone dies at home, the research from the National Institute on Aging is clear. There is no need to move the body right away. That might feel counterintuitive. We live in a culture that tends to move quickly, to call the professionals, to hand things over. But in the immediate aftermath of a death, you are allowed to pause. You are allowed to stay in the room. You are allowed to sit quietly, hold a hand, share memories, cry, pray, or simply be present in the way your heart and your culture and your faith call you to be. Some families want that time. Some people need it. And knowing that it's available, that you are not required to rush, can make an enormous difference in how you experience the first hours of loss. If your loved one is part of a hospice program, a plan for what happens after death will already be in place. That plan exists specifically so that families don't have to make urgent decisions in the fog of acute grief. If hospice was not involved, the guidance suggests talking in advance with the doctor, the local medical examiner, the local health department, or a funeral home representative about how to proceed. That conversation, before it's needed, is one of the most practical gifts you can give yourself and your family. Now, here's where most people get it wrong. They assume that end-of-life planning is about the big things, the will, the finances, the funeral preferences. And yes, those matter. But what the research points to, again and again, is that the small, specific, practical decisions, the ones that arise in the hours and days immediately following a death, are the ones families are least prepared for. And being unprepared for them doesn't just create logistical stress, it creates emotional stress on top of grief. It forces people to make decisions they're not ready to make, about things they don't fully understand, at the most vulnerable moment of their lives. So let's go through what actually needs to happen, step by step, in plain language. The first thing that must occur, and this needs to happen as soon as possible, is an official legal pronouncement of death. This is done by someone in authority. In a hospital or nursing facility, it's typically a doctor. If hospice is involved, it may be a hospice nurse. This person not only pronounces the death officially, but also completes the forms certifying the cause, time, and place of death. This step is not bureaucratic formality. It is the foundation for everything that follows. The official death certificate, which comes from this process, is a legal document that will be required again and again in the weeks and months ahead. Life insurance claims require it. Financial and property matters require it. Banks require it. Government agencies require it. Most families will need multiple certified copies of the death certificate, not just one, multiple. It's worth asking for more than you think you'll need, because obtaining additional copies later takes time and effort, which is the last thing you want to be managing while you're also grieving. This next detail changes everything in terms of what happens in the first days. Within the weeks following a death, there are several organizations and institutions that need to be notified, and the order and method of those notifications actually matters. If your loved one was receiving Social Security benefits, those payments need to be stopped. This is handled through the Social Security Administration. This is important not just practically, but because receiving payments after death can create complications that are genuinely difficult to untangle later. Life insurance companies need to be contacted to initiate any claims. You will need the death certificate and the policy numbers. If your loved one kept an organized record of their financial accounts and policies, even a simple list, that list is worth its weight in gold in this moment. If no such list exists, tracking down accounts and policy numbers falls to the family at a time when they have very little capacity for detective work. Credit reporting agencies, specifically the three major ones, Equifax, Experian, and TransUnion, should receive copies of the death certificate to prevent identity theft. This is a step that many families don't know about and don't take. And identity theft in the name of someone who has recently died is, unfortunately, a real and documented problem. A death certificate sent to these agencies flags the account and helps protect the estate. Banks and financial institutions need to be notified, and accounts need to be closed or transferred, depending on how they were structured. If the deceased person had a list of accounts and passwords, this process is significantly simpler. If not, the family will need to work through each institution with official documentation. And this is why doctors, financial advisors, and elder care specialists rarely explain this clearly enough. The administrative aftermath of a death is a second job, and it arrives at the same time as the deepest grief. Having even a basic, organized record of accounts, policies, important documents, and wishes created in advance when there's time and clarity dramatically reduces the burden on the people you love most. Let me ask you something directly. Does someone in your life know where your important documents are? Does someone know your account information, your insurance policies, your wishes? Not generally, specifically. Where the papers are, what the numbers are, who to call. If the answer is no, or if you're not sure, that is the single most actionable thing this video can point you toward. Creating that record, even a simple handwritten list in an envelope, is an act of love. It is one of the most concrete ways you can take care of your family right now, from wherever you're sitting. We are about 65% of the way through today, and this is the part I promised you at the beginning, the part that most people have genuinely never considered. It's about organ and brain donation, and I want to approach this carefully because it touches something very personal: your beliefs, your values, your sense of what is meaningful. At some point near or after death, a doctor may ask about donating organs. The heart, lungs, pancreas, kidneys, cornea, liver, and skin can all potentially be donated. These organs go to living people who need them. People of any age can be organ donors, and there is no cost to the donor's family. Most people know this in a general sense. But here's what many people don't know. Brain donation is entirely separate from organ donation. Registering as an organ donor does not mean you are choosing to donate your brain. These are two different decisions, two different processes, and they require separate registration. And brain donation, specifically, is one of the most significant contributions a family can make to medical research on Alzheimer's disease, frontotemporal dementia, Parkinson's disease, and other neurological conditions. Scientists cannot fully understand what happens in these diseases, cannot develop the treatments that will help future generations. Without the ability to study brain tissue directly after death, it is irreplaceable. There is no substitute for it. For families who have lived through a neurological illness with a loved one, brain donation can transform an experience of helplessness into one of contribution. It can mean that the suffering your family went through becomes part of something larger, part of the answer that other families are still waiting for. If this resonates with you, if you have a loved one who had or has a neurological condition, or if this is simply something that aligns with your values, it's worth looking into what registration involves. A conversation with a doctor or a neurological research institution is a starting point. And if it's not for you, that is completely okay. This is deeply personal. The point is simply that many people never know this option exists, and therefore never have the chance to make an informed choice about it. The research also addresses something else that often goes undiscussed: the question of autopsy. A doctor may ask, after a death, whether the family consents to an autopsy. An autopsy is a medical examination performed by a specially trained physician to determine or confirm the cause of death. For example, if a person was believed to have Alzheimer's disease, a brain autopsy can provide a definitive diagnosis that wasn't possible during life. Some families have religious or cultural concerns about autopsies. These concerns are valid and worth discussing with the doctor. And for families worried about a viewing at a funeral, the research notes that the physical signs of an autopsy are typically not visible. They're covered by clothing and other preparation. You don't have to make these decisions alone, and you don't have to make them in the moment if you've thought about them in advance. Let's bring this all together with what you can actually do, right now, before any of this is needed. First, have the conversation with your spouse, your adult children, your closest family members, whoever will be responsible for managing things after your death or after the death of someone you love. Not a vague conversation about wishes. A specific one. Where are the important documents? Where is the will? Who is the attorney? What are the insurance policies and where are they kept? What are your wishes about organ donation, brain donation, funeral arrangements? This conversation feels hard to start, but it is almost always a relief once it begins. People are generally grateful when it happens. They were waiting for permission. Second, create a simple, organized record. It doesn't need to be elaborate. A folder, a binder, or even a clearly labeled envelope containing the key documents and a list of important accounts, contacts, and wishes. Keep it somewhere your family knows about. Review it periodically as circumstances change. Third, if hospice care is a consideration for your loved one, or something you want to understand better, know that hospice programs include end-of-life planning as part of their service. They help families prepare for exactly the practical and emotional moments this video has covered. Connecting with a hospice organization before it's urgently needed gives you time to make thoughtful decisions. Fourth, consider the question of organ and brain donation personally and deliberately, not in the moment of a crisis when there is almost no time to think. Know your wishes. Make them known to your family and, where possible, to your doctor. Whether your answer is yes, no, or I need to learn more, make it an informed, considered choice rather than a default. And fifth, take care of your own legal and financial documents now, not later. A will, an advance directive that specifies your wishes for medical care if you become unable to make decisions. A durable power of attorney, both for financial matters and for healthcare, so that someone you trust can act on your behalf if needed. These documents protect you. They protect your family, and not having them creates exactly the kind of chaos and conflict that most families most want to avoid. If you're not sure where to start with any of this, a conversation with an elder law attorney or a financial advisor who specializes in estate planning is a good first step. This is their expertise. They can help you navigate it systematically, without overwhelm. Here's what I want you to carry from today. The practical side of death is not something to be afraid of. It is something to be prepared for, and preparation, quiet, thoughtful, made in advance with clarity and care, is one of the most loving things you can do for the people who will still be here after you are gone. No one wants to think about this. I understand that. But the families who have these conversations, who create these records, who make these decisions before they're urgent, they are the ones who can grieve more freely. Because they're not also scrambling to figure out what comes next. The information we covered today comes from the National Institute on Aging, one of the most credible health research bodies in the country. And it is not just procedural guidance. It is, at its core, guidance about how to protect the people you love from unnecessary burden at the hardest possible time. In the next video, I want to talk about something that connects to everything we've discussed across this series, the relationship between advanced planning and emotional well-being as we age. Because there is research showing that people who have their affairs in order, who have had these conversations, who know that their wishes are documented and understood, Those people report lower anxiety, a greater sense of control, and a more positive relationship with the future. Preparation and peace of mind are connected, and that connection is worth exploring. If you want to keep having honest, clear, useful conversations about aging, the kind that actually prepare you rather than simply worry you, subscribe. That's exactly what this channel is here to do. Thank you for watching. These are not easy topics, and the fact that you're here, engaging with them with openness and seriousness, says something important about who you are and how much you care. Take good care of yourself, and take good care of the people around you.